When requirements were set in stone that the Methodist Conference should physically meet every year, our forebears had not anticipated a coronavirus pandemic. But then neither had they anticipated the technological developments which did allow hundreds of Methodists from around the connection to discuss and decide upon matters affecting the life of our church, our nation and the world. We were even joined by global representatives participating from their home countries, including Bishop Samuel from the Free Methodist Church of Rwanda. Saturday saw the induction of Richard Teal and Carolyn Lawrence as the new President and Vice President. Those who would normally be on the platform, together with a very hard-working technical team, gathered at Cliff College to host the conference for the rest of the connection. Social distancing was very much in evidence. It was poignant to see that the items usually handed over from one president to another, such as John Wesley's Field Bible, had been sanitised and left on a table for the new incumbent to pick up. Richard and Carolyn's addresses to conference are both available online, and I would recommend reading or watching them. Richard looked to the Psalms and found at their heart themes of orientation, disorientation and reorientation which can help us navigate these uncertain times. In terms of his hope for a post-COVID church, Richard hopes that we will place a renewed emphasis on the faithfulness of God and put a greater reliance on the cross, resurrection and the power of the Holy Spirit. Carolyn held up a mirror to the Methodist Church, helping us to see how petty we can become in our local rules and traditions, and also revealing the ways in which we have discouraged, bullied, and abused people in shameful ways. But Carolyn also reminded us that the Church of Jesus Christ is awesome and doing amazing transformative work both in this country and around the world. She called us to work in love and unity so that Jesus might be praised all around the globe. One of the great sadnesses this year was that ordinations could not take place on Conference Sunday. Nevertheless, the service in which ordinands were received into full connection, including Sam Hageman and Josephine Soon from our own district, was still very moving. We look forward to Josephine and Sam being ordained at some time in the next connectional year. On Monday, we began serious engagement with the wealth of reports, order papers and notices of motion before us. Not always easy when each one of us was working separately from home. Our district set up a WhatsApp group which did at least allow us to feel connected as representatives from Wolverhampton and Shrewsbury. Equality, diversity and inclusion were the main focuses of our first day of business, particularly in the context of the Black Lives Matter movement. We affirmed our desire to be an inclusive Methodist church, but also heard impassioned testimonies about the many ways in which we fall short of this and the consequences for people's lives and ministries. This was a powerful reminder of Carolyn's address on the Saturday. Various notices of motion were agreed, which will lead to greater monitoring and review across all areas of connectional life, to encourage us all to witness to the inclusive love of God for all people and to hold the church to account when we fail. On Tuesday, I proposed my first ever notice of motion around the issue of Holy Communion celebrated online. Whilst I only had 3 minutes to make my speech, I was engaged in hours of conversations beforehand, both with those who believe passionately that this is something that we need to incorporate into our practice right now, and those who disagree or else feel that this is not a change we can make quickly. This last view was the one that prevailed, but I was at least glad to have stimulated discussions. Another major decision this year is whether the Methodist Church should continue to invest in fossil fuel companies in the face of climate change. A very thorough report had been prepared by JACI, which is the Joint Advisory Committee on the Ethics of Investment. We have for years used our position as shareholders to urge fossil fuel companies to come into line with the Paris Agreement on climate change. However, there is a real question now as to whether we need to move on from incremental to transformational change, and that complete investment would be one way of signalling that. We heard this view put forward very eloquently by Martha Rand, one of the youth reps to conference. If we did disinvest, then it would probably lead to lower returns on our investments. How much weight should this carry in our decision making? In the end, the matter was returned to the Methodist Council for further examination and decision. The youth reps made further contributions through a Bible study and in reporting on 3Generate. I share the huge disappointment that 3Generate won't take place as planned at the Birmingham NEC this year, but I'm looking forward to the year-round initiative, 3Generate 365, led by the next youth president from this district, Phoebe Parkin. Speaking of elections, the district is also home to our new Vice President-elect, Barbara Easton from the Wolverhampton circuit. She will join Reverend Sonia Hicks, the first black woman elected to be President of Conference, and I am confident that they'll make a great team. It was good to have the conference's agreement to the God for All, the strategy for evangelism and growth, which has been in preparation and consultation for the last 2 years. God for All is significant to the district as it will guide our mission planning. It was also reassuring to hear that social justice projects working at the margins of society will continue to be funded under this strategy. By Wednesday, we were on the home straight, but there was still important business to be considered. A report on oversight and trusteeship could have major implications for the church at every level. At its simplest, the report observes that we are now a small church trying to operate as though we are still a big church. We have more trustees than we need at every level, from conference down to the local church. And particularly as the demands of charity law expand, this is really more burden than we can bear. The report suggests that we should try to slim down at every level, and a further report will come to conference next year, and it's expected to recommend that the minimum size for a local church be raised from 6 members to between 12 and 25 people. This is not intended as an attack on smaller churches, but will call for joined up thinking and for new models which might see, for instance, a number of congregations on different sites coming under a unified church council. This is worth circuits bearing in mind now as they see what changes need to be made in a post-COVID situation. We don't yet know what things will look like post-COVID, but we know they will be different. The Connectional Treasurer, Tim Swindell, gave a sober account of connectional finances, which have already taken a hit running into millions of pounds, whereas savings during lockdown have only been in the hundreds of thousands. The coming year, we are told, will need to be a year of doing things differently. Not everything that has already been planned will be able to go ahead. But when assessing our own budgets, Tim encouraged circuits and churches not to abandon our mission plans. It may seem strange that I'm contributing this reflection from within the first week of my sabbatical, but the truth is, it's only now that I've laid down my daily assault on the mountain of emails that I've had a chance to step back and reflect on what happened at conference and what it means for the district. On the Tuesday afternoon, we'd gathered in workshops where in small groups we tried to come up with 12 rules for the post-COVID church. As well as recognition of grief and loss, there was lots of celebration of all the new things that the church has learned. The skills and wider reach of online worship, the grassroots pastoral care shown by members ringing one another up, the greater connectedness with just neighbours in the street during lockdown. The real anxiety in our small group was that either we would lose these gains as we reopen our churches, or that we would try to add them to our existing to-do list, making ourselves even more busy than we already were. And we already know that that was too busy. If we don't stop and reflect, or if we have getting back to how it was as our only guide, then these will be the outcomes. Either our losing the lessons we have learned, or our being just too busy to really listen to what God is saying to us. This pandemic has massively interrupted our way of being church. If the pandemic is the Good Friday event, then the resurrection that God is calling us to is to seize the opportunity to make the changes that we've known for a long time we need to make. But just as the sabbatical has allowed me to do, circuits need to pause, pray, and plan. If your post-COVID circuit ends up looking pretty much like your pre-COVID one did, I wonder whether that should be judged a measure of success. Our society, our world, is swimming in loss. We can't pretend that we can escape that. I suggest we follow our new president in placing a renewed emphasis on the faithfulness of God and a greater reliance on the cross, the resurrection, and the power of the Holy Spirit.